Welcome to this April 11, 2022 meeting of the Lake Bluff Village Board of Trustees. Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Ingeman.
Here.
Trustee Brienne.
Here.
Trustee Fisher. Here. Trustee Markey.
Here.
Trustee Rajan.
Here.
Trustee Ryder.
Here.
Thank you. Please stand and join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First, tonight we have awards and proclamations, and first is a proclamation declaring April 29th, 2022 Arbor Day. Whereas Arbor Day will be officially observed in the state of Illinois on Friday, April 29, 2022, by proclamation of a governor, and the planting of trees on Arbor Day is a tradition through the state and the village of Lake Bluff. And whereas the village of Lake Bluff has been recognized as Tree City USA for the past 26 years by the National Arbor Day Foundation, and whereas trees in our village, wherever they are planted, increase property values, enhance our business and residential areas, beautify our community, and are a source of joy, and promote the environmental well-being of present and future generations. And whereas Lake Bluff Garden Club, Lake Bluff Open Lands, Lake Bluff School District, Lake Bluff Park District, and other private and public institutions have actively supported preservation efforts and the renewal of natural areas through tree planting and landscape projects. And whereas the celebration of Arbor Day 2022 in Lake Bluff will be observed on Thursday, April 28th at 10:30 a.m. through the day in programs at schools, and in particular in the planting of a tree at the Lake Bluff Recreation Center. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Régis Charlot, Village President of the Village of Lake Bluff, Illinois, proclaim Friday, April 29, 2022 as Arbor Day in the Village of Lake Bluff. And I urge all citizens to support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands, to plant trees on this day, and to join in the celebration ceremony with the Lake Bluff Garden Club and the Lake Bluff Open Lands. Thank you. Next also is a proclamation designating April 2022 Fair Housing Month. Whereas April 2022 marks the 54th anniversary of the passage of a U.S. Fair Housing Law, Title 8 of the Civil Rights Act of 1968, as amended, which enunciates a national policy of fair housing without regards to race, color, religion, sex, familial status, handicap, and national origin, and encourages fair housing opportunities for all citizens. And whereas individuals in the state of Illinois are guaranteed the right to choose where to live without discrimination based on race, color, religion, age, sex, including sexual harassment and pregnancy, familial status, marital status, national origin and ancestry, disability, sexual orientation, gender identity, military status, and favorable military discharge, and order of protection status. And whereas acts of housing discriminations and barriers to equal housing opportunity are repugnant to a common sense of decency and fairness. And whereas the Village of Lake Bluff welcomes the opportunity to reaffirm our commitment to the principle of fair housing for all, is committed to all efforts that address discrimination in our communities, supports all programs that will educate the public concerning their rights to equal housing opportunity, and assures every person their right to live free of a fear of housing discrimination. Now therefore, I, Régis Charlot, Village President of the Village of Lake Bluff, Illinois, do hereby proclaim April 2022 Fair Housing Month in the village of Lake Bluff and call upon the people of Lake Bluff to wholeheartedly recognize the importance of fair housing to our village and nation and the progress we have made in ensuring equal and equitable housing for all people. Thank you. Next is the consideration of the minutes of the March 28th, 2022 Village Board meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Thank you. A second.
Second.
Any changes? Thank you. Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Brian.
Aye.
Trustee Fisher.
Aye.
Trustee Markey.
Aye.
Trustee Rappin.
Aye.
Trustee Ryder.
Aye.
Trustee Inkman.
Aye.
Thank you. Next item is our non-agenda items and visitors. The village president and board of trustees allocate 15 minutes during this item for those individuals who would like the opportunity to address the village board of trustees on any matter not listed on this agenda. Each person addressing the village board of trustees is asked to limit their comments to a maximum of 5 minutes.
No, sir.
Not yet, not yet. Sorry about that. Anybody in the room who would like to address the boards on any matter? Anybody online?
No.
Thank you. Next is item number 6. The village board sets the order of a meeting. The village president and board of trustees will entertain requests from anyone present on the order of business to be conducted during the village board meeting. So I guess we could move ahead, item 8A and item 23. Any other request? So I guess we'll move to item 8A. That would be the village administrator's report and especially informational report from Croya manager Todd Nahigan regarding Croya programs and services.
Yeah, I don't want to be redundant and repeat the memo, but Todd, you want to come on up and introduce yourself? But I also, Todd, I guess that's why you do what you do. You follow around with a bunch of people who are going to clap when you show up.
Yeah, right.
That's great. Improve our hiring
Thank you
here.
for having us back. This is exciting. President Charlot and village trustees and village administrator Irvin, this has been a long time coming. We came a few years ago, of course, prior to COVID, but it's been a long time. We have a couple things to hand out to all of you, whether you're trustees or an attorney or a clerk, you all get one. Kids are going to come up and hand out Croya t-shirts, and we have a 40th anniversary magazine that shows you all about what's gone on at Croya in the last 40 years, as well as an article that was just published in the Lake Forest Scout newspaper, the school newspaper, by one of our Lake Bluff students, Gigi Snellback. And then there's also a piece of our budget page that gives highlights from the past year, things we're looking forward to this coming year, and a little bit about the budget. But each one of you guys, do you want to come up? Those of you that have the items, just pass them out quickly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Todd, would you also maybe introduce Carolyn?
Yes.
Yeah.
We have 2 board members here with us today. Christine Carr is our board chairman. She's from Lake Bluff. And we have Carolyn Bielski, who is also a teacher at the high school and one of our board members for a number of years. We're excited that they're both here representing Lake Bluff.
Can you tell us?
Do you have a small in there somewhere?
Yeah, if you just tell the students what size you go for,
And we'll get whatever we get.
the better.
Sure.
Get what you get.
Yes, definitely.
Sure, I'd love that extra large.
Like when you're young, you're like,
It's
great.
the biggest size, and I'll wear it as a nightshirt.
I'll take an XL, just an XL.
I think Abby has the XLs.
Yellow.
President Charlot needs one.
I'll do an XL.
Well, I'll take anything.
Whatever you want.
What's left here?
Serve those folks first.
Thank you very much.
Abby,
I'll take one
you
of
would
those
like
yellow
an
ones.
XL.
I'll take any XL you've
But
got.
is
I'll
this
wear it
a-
with pride.
Yeah, that'll work. Thank you.
Or I'll take a medium.
Look at that, Tara.
Thank you.
Gray, what color, what size?
This is large. I don't like it. Take a large. That's fine.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you. So helpful. That's fun.
They don't know.
Everybody loves a t-shirt.
I know. Oh, it's long
No,
sleeve.
this is fine. This is
My
great.
sister Valerie was
Oh,
in
no,
my class.
yours
Yep.
don't look.
Thank you.
Gray's a good color for you, Drew.
Slimming.
Slimming. All right, so without further ado, I've been with Croya. My name is Todd Nahigian, as President Charlot said, and I've been with Croya 27 years. I started when I was about 6. But that may not be true, but what is true is that one of your village trustees was in high school when I started. Hi, Taryn, how are you?
Really good to see you.
It's really good to see you as
Look a
well.
little bit more grown up. But
I know.
We were basically the same age.
Basically the same, yeah. She was actually in high school when I started.
Hi, buddy, what's going on?
He's talking to you, Todd, for sure.
I'm doing great. All right, so some background stuff that maybe isn't as exciting as hearing from the students. I just want to let you guys know that through COVID, we pushed ahead. We did a lot of programs and they were virtual, and then we did some great things that were outdoors. We had a Battle of the Bands. We had our 40th anniversary +1 because it was delayed from 2020 into 2021. Our typical year is about 300 programs and meetings for middle school and high school kids. Middle school are typically separate from the high school. We do community service projects and fun things during the summer where those groups are brought together. But for the most part, we average somewhere between 6,000 and 7,000 attendees throughout the year. And that was in fiscal year 20, which ended in April of 20, and then on to 21 and 22. Our numbers did go down. Because of COVID, it was closer to 4,000, but we're already at 6,000 moving forward, and we've got the end of the month to go. So of those 5,700 back in fiscal year 20, 2,200 of those participants were from Lake Bluff. Approximately 1,000 of the students in the fiscal year 21 during COVID were from Lake Bluff, and the attendees already this year are over 2,300 from Lake Bluff. That does not mean that those students all walked into the Croya facility. These are numbers that include us doing programs, educational classes, field trips, road trips of any kind where the students are included. We, over the summer, have often been part of the cleanup for prior to Lake Bluff 4th of July parade, where we brought students and done weeding right outside some of the main buildings here. We always set up the Kiwanis Pancake Breakfast the day before with the tables and chairs and all the members of the Kiwanis Club. And then, of course, we have the tradition of being one of the parade floats, and I'll tell you, I think it's, to be honest, the greatest venue for any rock band in high school. There's never more people seeing one band at a time than in the Lake Bluff 4th of July parade. So that's a huge thing. This year, our Battle of the Bands will be taking place on Friday, June 10th, which is just in time to crown the winner as the float presenter for the 4th of July. So we're really excited about that. We have our staff here tonight, Rick Day, Catherine Gray, and Leslie Walton. That's so nice. Leslie Walton is our middle school youth worker, so she spends the most of the time in Lake Bluff at the middle school. And just a handful of things that have happened in the middle school in the previous year, and as well as bringing those Lake Bluff kids to Croya. We provided a stress management lesson in their health class to the entire school, 6th, 7th, and 8th grades. It was our entire staff one day that went into the school. Leslie represented Croya during the Red Ribbon Week events, during the Wellness Week, running all sorts of programs to get the kids involved and help them understand a little of the positive and uplifting messages that these different programs provide. The Red Ribbon Week was another thing that she also has been part of. And this is typically coming into the school and presenting and being connected to a couple hundred students at a time. Our ski trip this year was about 30 students up to Alpine Valley, and half those students were from Lake Bluff. Some of those students had never been to Croya before, so that's really exciting. Leslie has been recently said to me that she thinks in the 6 years she's been here, this is the most involved Lake Bluff students have been and excited about all the different activities. We have a van that goes to Lake Bluff Middle School every single day. There's probably 8 to 10 regulars. And that doesn't mean they're all getting on the van every day, but throughout the week they are. And what's nice about it is that they can bring a friend. We have one boy recently that broke his leg, and we were able to provide a wheelchair when he got to Croya. So he came on the van and was able to come over recently. And then our most fun story recently is about a young lady who wouldn't come to Croya. She wasn't comfortable, she wasn't interested, she didn't know whether or not it was gonna be right for her. But she heard from Leslie at lunch that we were gonna be entertaining therapy dogs from the Pause for Patrick group. That is a foundation in Lake Forest and Lake Bluff based upon a student that passed away who loved animals. And this girl decided that this would be the day she would visit Croya. And if I could tell you, she's a regular now. It's been months that she comes at least a couple times a week. And so there's all sorts of ways that we can reach these kids, all sorts of important things that are happening, building relationships with our staff, building friendships with the other students. There's so many different things that have happened. One of the more highlighted educational programs that Leslie does is the Peer Assistance and Leadership Program. She teams up with Nate Blackmer at the middle school and the social worker Carly Quick in order to provide an incredible curriculum of what to do, how to be a better friend, how to be able to problem solve. And in those 6th, 7th, and 8th grade years, we know that those issues are very important. The high school level, we have multiple bands that play every year in our Battle of the Bands and our Lake Forest Day Band Jam in August, and many of those kids are from Lake Bluff. This year, the new media program with Steve Douglas at the high school brought all the students to Lake Forest, from Lake Forest and Lake Bluff to Croya during the summer and did a seminar with Vince Vaughn, and it was very exciting, and about a dozen of those kids were from Lake Bluff. You may know that we did a beach cleanup to honor the Lake Bluff 125th anniversary, which was very exciting. We had a huge amount of kids down at the beach and also had a band jam as well. We've got so many fun things going on, and I could stand here forever and tell you all about them, but I think what would be nice is to let some of the students speak. And before I do that, I'll just let you know that our budget for this year is $643,000, where we get $62,500 is about 10% coming from the Village of Lake Bluff. Our user fees are a little over $40,000. Most of what we do is for free, but when we have a road trip or a retreat or we go to a Cubs game, the tickets are purchased by the students. Schools provide us $17,500. That's District 65, 67, and 115. And then we make a few $1,000s each year with people renting the facility. We focus only on Lake Forest and Lake Bluff residents coming to rent the facility, or the school districts are always welcome as well. We also have a Croya Foundation that supports Croya up and beyond what the city and the village and the schools can provide. So on to the kids. Jacqueline Rubin is our current chairwoman of Croya. She runs our executive committee of 24 students. And tonight she's not only going to share a little bit about what has made Croya a great place for her, but she's going to share with you an essay that was written last year by a graduate from the high school who's from Lake Bluff, who won one of the scholarships, one of the awards for writing the Spirit of Essay Croya contest. Jacqueline.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Todd, for the warm welcome. I'm Jacqueline Rubin, and I am this year's Croya chairwoman. And I wanted to start by saying thank you to the village president, Charlot, and the board of trustees for allowing Croya to share with you some of the great things that we've been doing recently. We are honored to have the support to provide the youth with a place that they can call their own. Croya, the committee representing our young adults, began back in 1980 and has been evolved into a national leader in community-based youth organizations. My main responsibility throughout the past year is to run Wednesday night high school meetings along with the executive committee, some of which are here today, to help guide high school programs and different things like that, and hang out with the staff and stuff. Croya provides a place where high school and middle school students from Lake Bluff, Knollwood, and Lake Forest are given the opportunity to create meaningful programs, and the Croya staff is there to provide a safe environment where we can be ourselves, learn leadership skills, and meet new friends. So you might be asking, what has it done personally for me? Croya, the committee representing our young adults, is a youth-driven organization that has changed my life. Throughout high school, I've been fortunate to identify myself as a Croya kid, even more my junior and senior year, achieving positions on the high school youth board as fundraising chair and chairwoman. These positions have allowed me to represent the voice of the youth at Croya through leading monthly adult and youth board meetings, weekly high school meetings, and annual retreats. Through this, I have not only gained confidence in my ability to speak publicly, but in making those around me feel as though they can be themselves without judgment. Located in Lake Forest, Illinois, Croya Student Union was established in response to the unique stresses affecting teens within Lake Forest and Lake Bluff. The mission is simple: help young adults learn self-worth and acceptance while understanding the value of compassion towards peers and their differences. When I attended my first retreat during my freshman year, I was unaware of the impact Croya would have on me. Watching Gina, former chairwoman of my freshman year, encouraged every new retreatant to be themselves, and that is the reason why I am chairwoman today. Her love for this organization is what has carried me to this point and continues to inspire me daily to share the magic of Croya with friends, classmates, and neighbors. Not only has this organization provided me with a positive outlet, but comfort in knowing that I will always be a Croya kid for the rest of my life, so long as I carry the same loving spirit that is ever familiar to its inclusive environment, of which I have been so proud to be involved in. So we welcome you to all come and experience the magic of Croya with us for a youth-led tour, and especially for Croya's annual recognition dinner, which is going to be held on Thursday, May 24th at Croya. At that recognition dinner, we do some of the senior awards, which is one of these essays that I will be reading for you guys tonight. So for Croya's 2021 Senior Awards, there were 3 winners of the Margot Martino Spirit of Croya Essay Award, and I'm going to read one of them right now, and it was the winning award from my good friend and fellow Croya kid, Anna Seifer. And Anna is attending the University of Vermont right now, and she's a proud Lake Bluff resident. Anna has served on the fundraising chair during her junior year and was Croya Foundation liaison during her senior year, and a retreat leader for the 2021 spring retreat. So you guys will learn a little bit more about her in this essay. People most often think of a home as a physical structure that you live in with your biological family. I think most Croya kids, including myself, have a deeper understanding of home. I spent most of my freshman year feeling anxious in my own home. I struggled with my own mental health, along with trying to take care of my family members who struggled themselves. I never felt that I had a place to relax and let go. I never felt that I had a place to truly be myself until Croya came along. I went to my first Croya retreat during the fall of my sophomore year, which was really the beginning of my high school Croya experience. It was like nothing I had ever experienced before. 80 kids breaking down their walls and opening up to those whom they never thought they would. I was lucky enough to be able to attend the spring retreat later that year. My assigned group truly changed my life. My 2 leaders, Francis Hickey and Lucas Redding, made our group a family. I shared things on this retreat that not only my closest friends knew. I shared about my mother's schizophrenia and how I had been battling depression, anxiety, and an eating disorder, all results of the stress her condition put on my family and me. I know this sounds cliche, but for once I felt a weight lifted off my shoulders. I had talked to therapists and social workers, but nothing quite matched Croya. To be among my peers and accepted for all that I am and all that I am not. It's a feeling everyone deserves to feel, always. This sense of acceptance pushed me to become involved in Croya activities. For one of my times volunteering at the Croya Poinsettia Sale, I was lucky enough to deliver poinsettias to Mrs. Martino herself. When we rang her doorbell with bags upon bags of poinsettias in our hands, she ran to the door with joy. Her face lit up when she saw that Todd had decided to bring youth to deliver that day. We spent 30 minutes or so talking to her about old Croya stories and how they related to what we were doing. It was truly heartwarming to see how much Croya had not changed through its 40 years. The organization is still run by the kids for the kids. I think Mrs. Martino saw that too. She could not stop smiling. As we left that day, she gave my friends and me the biggest hug and thanked us for our help at Croya. Nothing felt better. This spring, I had the privilege to attend and lead what was unfortunately my last retreat. After nearly a full year at home due to the pandemic, my fellow leaders and I pondered with our retreatants, what makes a house a home? Everyone had their own opinions, but what we all could agree on is that what makes a house a home is not the foundation, insulation, or wood, nor is it the location, the size, or style. It is a place where you can be your best self, but also be your full self, where you don't feel pressured to hide any part of you or be something that you aren't. They always say at Croya that everyone has a chapter that they don't read aloud. Maybe home is where you can. I was welcomed into Croya as a shy, anxious, unsure of myself freshman who was greeted that day by some who became my best friends now. The people I am afraid to leave behind, the people who made this place home. I am sad to leave Croya and all the people I have met here. Even more, I am grateful. Grateful to be a part of a place it is so hard to leave. Grateful to leave these doors as a confident, well-rounded individual, all thanks to Croya. So that was her winning essay, which was obviously amazing. And now I would like to welcome up Scott Weston, who is also a Lake Bluff resident and a Croya kid.
Well, that wasn't very much of an introduction, but I'll take it.
Come on, Scott, you can do it. Let's go. He's a scout. He should be able to do it.
Thank you, President Charlotte. Sorry. It's tough. French is difficult. All right. Good evening, trustees. You probably don't know me. My name is Scott Weston. I live in Knollwood, actually, which we don't really talk about that much. We should really get on that, you guys. We need to. I live in Knollwood, and I'm just going to talk to you about my path and how I got involved with Croya. I'm a terrible public speaker, unlike Jacqueline, so just bear with me for like 2 minutes. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about myself, and then I'll tell you about Croya today. So I started coming to Croya when I was in 7th grade, and that's the first year that you're actually supposed to be allowed to go to Croya. And you can go any day after school just to hang out. And I would take the green bus, the green van actually, with my friend Fritz Bielski, who his mom is actually here, which I didn't think that she would be here. And we were probably the only 2 people on the van, because when I was in 7th grade, Croya was really just unknown to kids at Lake Bluff. Todd just said that you guys give us all this money, but I had never heard about it until I was in 7th grade. Him and I were the only ones there, and we'd come over and we'd play ping pong, or there was a cooking club, which obviously we couldn't do, sadly, because of the pandemic. That sucks. But my sister encouraged us to come because she was involved with Croya, and then she later became the chairwoman of Croya. So she always pushed me and Fritz to come, and I'm glad we did. Then in the beginning of my 8th grade year, we had a few dances at Croya, which was just the time of our lives. We thought that was just amazing, like Lollapalooza or something.
Very close.
And then the pandemic pushed us all away from Croya for months, but it has had a substantial impact on all of our lives, but we still somehow managed to stay together through Zoom meetings and other online things. Whether it was just trivia or sitting around listening to Catherine tell us about all the gossip at work, we loved just being with each other. But honestly, I don't think I could have gone through that whole year as an 8th grader without Croya. But this is just part of my This is just a part of my long story at Croya, as I was able to attend my first fall retreat, and it just changed my life. I had no clue that a group of people was able to give me so much unconditional love and support. I remember one time at the retreat, it was maybe like 11 o'clock, midnight, and we were doing an activity where you blindfold someone and you have to lead them through the forest or whatever. And basically, it was all going well, and my retreat leader told me to step too quick, and I end up tripping and almost eating a log in front of me. And I still haven't gotten over it yet, Chloe. So, although it was funny, but it still hurt. These retreats have helped me to become the person I am today, and I wouldn't be here talking to you guys if I didn't go on that retreat. Also, I was on the wait list because so many people go on Croya retreats. Thank God I got off. So I'm just here to tell you, Croya works. Like, this club, or whatever you want to call it, it brings kids together and provides a special place for them to get together. But believe it or not, I actually sit on the board of executives at Croya, like you guys do. But our meetings are not as formal, even though I think we should get microphones. Like, that would be really cool. I'm actually the only Lake Bluff kid on the board of execs, and I'm topic night, which just means that I run some of the meetings at Croya. I was elected there with my friend Gigi Snellback, who wrote the article that you guys should read. It's great. And we basically have run a lot of things together, like what would you do for $1, dodgeball, what's in the box, the homecoming party, and so many more. But what brings me back every Wednesday night is the people. Some of them here with us tonight, I just want to say that you guys are the reason why I do it and the reason I come to Croya. And especially the high schoolers that feel pressure to do stuff in high school that kind of is illegal, but it's like Croya is a place for us where we don't have to feel any of that pressure and we can just be kids. Lastly, in my rant tonight, I just want to talk about Jacqueline. She is just such a special person, and we met last summer at a Croya meeting, and we ended up going to the Cubs game together, and I didn't know her, and we ended up just becoming such close friends. She truly is my guardian angel, and I just don't know what I'm gonna do without her next year. Her and so many others make Croya such a special place, and I know like I've sounded like a broken record tonight, but I just feel like it was necessary to tell you guys that this is so important, and I can't believe that it's been so long since we've came to talk to you guys. Just thank you so much for listening to me tonight. You were a great audience.
If you have any questions, I know we went a little long. We can also communicate via email, and anytime, we'd love to have you guys come visit. Thank you, Jacqueline. Thank you, Scott. It was great to be here.
So Todd, Jacqueline, and Scott, thank you very much. Great speeches, by the way. Todd, those are incredible numbers you shared with us. I mean, the participation from Lake Bluff is remarkable. And to my, I've driven my kids many times to play music at Croya, and I'm always impressed by the band coming in around the 4th of July. I love it. And it shows our community. It really shows that you guys are becoming leaders in our community and leaders for whoever will be lucky to have you as workmates or partners or anything else. You guys are absolutely shining, and I love to see you guys here. So Todd, you're doing an incredible job shaping our
Wonderful.
community. So
Thank you. We really are honored and appreciate the support, and we'd like to come back sooner next time. Obviously, COVID has changed a lot of things, but we really appreciate everything that you guys do, and we look forward to doing some great things.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You can go. Yeah, you can go, please.
You guys will be bored.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Here's your rush, Jeremy.
That was really good energy. That was awesome.
Nice. Let's see.
Good change
Bottle
of pace.
that.
It's kind of fun to see Scott he's in the Boy Scout, and I'm a leader in the Boy Scout, and I've seen him since he was about 5 or 6 years old. It's awesome to see him like that.
He was great.
It's very, very neat. So resuming our meeting, item number 23 on the agenda. That would be a second reading of ordinance granting variations from the village floor area ratio and building coverage restrictions at 562 Sunrise Avenue. Is there a motion to approve a resolution?
So moved.
Ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. On January 20th, 2022, the Village of Lake Bluff received a zoning variation application from Donald Schumacher and Kim Patterson, jointly the applicants, for zoning relief necessary to renovate the interior and exterior of a property and add a covered screened-in porch to the rear of a single-family residence located at 562 Sunrise Avenue. The existing building does not conform with a village floor area ratio limitation, and the proposed work would increase both the floor area by a 62% variation and the building coverage by a 4% variation of a building beyond the maximums established by the zoning regulation. At its March 10 meeting, the PCZBA conducted a public hearing to consider the variations and unanimously recommended that the village board grant the requested relief with no special conditions. At its March 14 meeting, member of the village board expressed concern with the nature of a variation request and deferred first reading approval in order to allow the applicant to appear before the board. Staff understands that the applicant will participate in Monday's board meeting and will be available to answer any questions. The village board approved first reading of the ordinance at its March 20th meeting. Questions on the board for this second reading? No questions.
No questions.
So hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Fisher?
Aye.
Trustee Markey?
Aye.
Trustee Rappin?
Aye.
Trustee Ryder?
Aye.
Trustee Inkman?
Nay.
Trustee Brand?
Nay.
Thank you. The ordinance passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can I just say thank you for being considerate? I mentioned last time, I'm in commercial real estate. I sit in these meetings till 10 o'clock at night, writing on an agenda without anybody else in the room. And Lake Bluff, it's fitting to the Lake Bluff culture that you're considerate. And watching them first was awesome. My kids benefited from Koya growing up here, and that was really cool. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Good luck. So 7A. So resuming our agenda 7A, and that would be the warrant report for March 29th to April 11, 2022, and March 2022 payroll expenditures. As a summary of background and reason for request, expenditure of village funds for payment of invoices in the amount of $298,658.14 for March 29 to April 11, 2022, and expenditure of village funds for payment of payroll in the amount of $304,052.11 for March 2022, for total expenditures of $602,710.25. The documents and reports attached consist of a warrant report for March 29, April 11, 2022, again for $298,658.14, and the fiscal year 2021-2022 payroll report. Is there a motion to approve the warrant report?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Thank you. Are there any questions? So this is a voice vote, correct?
No.
It's a roll call. Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Markey?
Aye.
Trustee Rappin?
Aye.
Trustee Ryder?
Aye.
Trustee Inkman?
Aye.
Trustee Brand?
Aye.
Trustee Fisher?
Aye.
Thank you. The report carries, the motion carries. Next would be item number 9, our village attorney's report.
No report tonight.
Thank you very much. Next is item number 10, village president's report. And tonight that would be the appointments to village advisory boards and commissions. This is a motion, right? This is a roll call.
You would need to, ask for a motion.
So is there a motion to approve this appointments resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. The village president is required by the municipal code to appoint, reappoint members to the village's various advisory boards and commissions, subject to the consent of a board of trustees. The following village residents are recommended as indicated below. For the Architectural Board of Review, for a 2-year term, as a chair, Bob Hunter, and Scott Stradiff. For the PCCBA Joint Plan Commission and Zoning Board of Appeals, for a 3-year term, Jill Dunley, who is renewing, Deb Fisher, Gary Peters, George Russell, and Ann Sorensen. For the HPC, the Historical Preservation Commission, for a 4-year term, Stephen Cross and Lois Nicol, and Steve Cross will renew until we find another board chair, by the way. And last, for the Police Pension Fund Board, for a 2-year term, Mark Betts and Tim Morris. And be said that I have spoken to all these individuals for renewal. The village president also recommends reappointment of the following chairpersons to 1-year term. Architectural Board of Review, Robert Hunter, Historical Preservation Commission Chair, Steve Cross, and Plan Commission and Zoning Board of Appeal Chair, Gary Peters. Are there any questions?
You must have been very busy.
I know.
You got lots of volunteers here. That's awesome.
No, it's good. And I have conveyed our sincere appreciation of their work for us, for screening questions and concerns from the village residents. And every time I have had people who were happy to serve, who were appreciative of us really respecting their work and be very happy to serve for our community.
Thank you.
So it's a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. Next is our consent agenda. And that would be item number 11, the acceptance of a correspondence. Please note all correspondence was delivered to the Village Board of Trustees in the informational reports on March 20, 27, and April 1st, 2022. Item number 12, a resolution approving the appointment of a building commissioner and deputy building commissioners. Item number 13, a resolution approving the Village of Lake Bluff 2022 to 2023 official pay plan. Item number 14, a resolution adopting a revised employee handbook for the village. Item 15, a second reading of an ordinance declaring personal property owned by the Village of Lake Bluff as surplus. Item number 16, an ordinance amending Title I of the Municipal Code regarding the comprehensive fee schedule for accessory dwellings unit fee reduction. Item number 17, an ordinance amending the second year of a biennial budget of the Village of Lake Bluff for the fiscal year beginning May 1st, 2021, and ending April 30, 2022. Is there a request to remove any of these items from the consent agenda?
Yes. 13.
13? So we'll discuss that next.
Yep.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda without item number 13?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. It's a roll call. Thank you. Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Rabin?
Aye.
Trustee Breyer?
Aye.
Trustee Hickman?
Aye.
Trustee Briand?
Aye.
Trustee Fisher?
Aye.
Trustee Markey?
Aye.
Next would be item 13. Yep. Is there a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved.
Thank you. Second.
Second.
Thank you. Attached, so for item 13, as a resolution approving the Village of Lake Bluff 2022 to 2023 official pay plan. Attached is a resolution approving the Village of Lake Bluff official pay plan, the pay plan for fiscal year beginning May 1st, 2022. This document, which is updated annually, establishes the authority and official guidelines by which the village administrator may appoint, promote, evaluate, and compensate all village employees except those employees subject to one of the village 3 collective bargaining agreements: police sergeants, police officers, and public works union. For full-time employees, a main component of a pay plan is the schedule of salary ranges for the various village positions. Please note that actual non-union employee pay increases are strictly performance-based. There are no cost of living adjustments. The fiscal year 2022 annual budget includes a 3% pool for these salary adjustments. Consistent with village pay policy, the attached pay plan reflects adjustment to the ranges for the following position. And I will skip the table. At their February 14th meeting, the Finance Committee reviewed the schedule of salary ranges, a comparison survey of salaries to comparable communities, and recommended approval of the pay plan. Staff will be available to respond to questions for village boards. Are there any questions? Kate?
Thank you. My questions are questions that I had, but also that were directed to me by members of constituents, residents. I think what jumped off the page to the people that contacted me, so I was just curious, is for the double-digit increase to the high end, the max for the assistant to the village administrator. So people were wondering if that number was accounted for in future budgets. They don't, it's not a question of whether it's market, everybody gets that. So that's not, I did a whole survey of all of the municipalities from Evanston to the Wisconsin border. So I get the market, so to speak. But I think the 21% increase took people aback a little bit because all the others are single digits with the exception of one. So my question was how market justifies a 21% increase when the others are 8, 9, 10, 5? And is that number accounted for in the 2022-23 number? Because we're going to see a 18% increase in pay in certain circumstances. Like I just picked one, like Drew, your number is in fiscal 22-23 is $475,000. It's a 18% increase in pay. So I'm just trying to figure out how we're going to pay for all this. That's my biggest concern. But residents saw that and thought that was what was actually going to be someone's increase in pay.
It's not.
Okay.
That's the simplest answer. And when the Finance Committee talked about it, they had a range of comparable communities when they looked at that.
Right.
And that's, I think one of the issues is that title's a bit of a misnomer, to be honest. It's, in this organization, that individual performs a lot of tasks, probably more, I would say 2/3 of their workload is related to planning activities. And so there are a lot of general administration and management functions and roles and communication, risk management, which are typical in that classification of an employee. But here, it's really a planner, and if we went shopping to find a planner, it'd be very difficult to find somebody in that range. It's difficult to secure good quality folks today in general, and so I have no problem recommending these ranges at all. And as we talked about the Finance Committee, it's consistent with the market when you're looking at a hybrid between assistant twos and planners and community development folks. So that's probably why that's a little misleading when people just don't necessarily know that. And I think I talked to you about that, Joey, about the title, and it's something that we talk about. And it's a lot of people who come to work in this village and fulfill that role here have aspirations to be city managers. So sometimes they want that title versus like a community development director, which would be a lot more expensive, but they end up fulfilling a lot and wearing lots of hats because we're so small. So it's always been a very difficult position to compare to in the marketplace, but when we went out shopping 5 years ago, when we were lucky enough to find Glenn, we talked to a lot of planners because that's the skill that we predominantly need. So.
Okay. So that's a good answer because it's not clear when you just say market, because
Yeah.
then it implies something that, it leaves out the detail.
Yeah.
And again, this isn't personal at all. I know Glenn. This isn't about Glenn. This is about the dollars and cents and how do you pay for all this going forward when Bettina has said we're going to have some static revenue in sales tax. And that's all I ever think about is how to pay for all this stuff. So that was one of my questions was that, because we're comparing ourselves to, municipalities like Waukegan that are 80-some thousand people. So they have a lot more rooftops to draw in revenue, although they have a lot more employees too. When you sit and start to do the research, it's pretty staggering. So I think that was my biggest concern, because I'm thinking down the road, long-term, about just how this is going to happen. The other thing that I thought was good, when we talk about internal equity with regard to Director of Finance versus Chief of Police, generally that's where jobs are similar. And I can't think of two jobs that were more different than the Director of Finance and the Chief of Police. They don't really have anything to do with each other. So is that really internal equity?
It is
That's the goal, or is that just market again?
It's a little bit of both, but the issue has been those have been some of the most difficult positions to fill in the community, and more often than not, those are some of the highest compensated employees in an organization. And so it just so happens within our organization,
That's true.
those two have been very similar over the years, and their markets align truly. And most of the time, we're hiring very experienced professionals in that sector. So
Yeah, understood. So have you and I have talked about this before, but I just want to ask this question on the record just because it's something else that came up that people asked me about is outsourcing as a way for us to reduce our overhead, because every dollar that we increases our pension liability too, which is a huge concern for me and should be for all of us. So I'm just curious, I noticed like on the warrant report, we have another payment to Lauterbach for services. But nevertheless, that doesn't involve any pension. So is there any contemplation of continuing to look at outsourcing full FTEs so we can reduce that overhead and that burden on our residents?
And the answer is always. I mean, we're constantly looking at internally. There's some things that, like the most recent one was the outsourcing the assistant finance director position, and that's what you're commenting on, the Lauterbach Amon, who's fulfilling that role for the village right now. Some towns have outsourced finance totally, but they're spending more. And part of that is because they've gone out in the market to try to hire somebody in-house, and they can't find somebody. So they end up outsourcing that for that reason, because they can't find the quality of applicant they want. And I know they're paying more, and they will admit to they're paying more, but it's usually because they want a specific talent, right? So
Right, but they're paying more in terms of
near term,
but
Sure.
not on the long term.
Yeah.
That's a concern of mine as well from this standpoint, because I don't know where we go from here. And I guess that's the final question I had is how often do we see this kind of a significant change? Since this is my first year doing this, I didn't know if this was something that is seen historically where we're seeing 10, 20% increases in the max.
No, it's not. It's a bit higher, and part of that is a lot of our ranges, the village's goals try to be in the midpoint in the market, and we've been under, and most of these are still under. It's just that, again, the talent pool out there is demanding and securing higher compensation, and we see that all the time. There are communities giving $20,000 bonuses to find police officers that are laterals. So it's very, very competitive out there. Yeah, I would say this year is a bit of an anomaly with that position, and part of that has just been the number of assistant twos in the universe has reduced. People have tightened up their budgets, and there's fewer of those positions out there for comparable sake. So you start getting, the numbers get weirder and weirder, right? In terms of finding true comparable positions, back to what I first talked about. So it looks, it's bigger than it normally is, but the truth of the matter is our current person in that role is already within that range. They're on the low end of that range. But again, if I went out to find somebody to replace them, we'd probably be on the higher side. So, but right now, we're not in that, fortunate not to be in that position, and that's the truth.
Drew, can I ask a question?
Sure.
These ranges, you said that the village strives to be at the midpoint in the market, right? Mm-hmm. And there's no correlation between this data, which is the midpoint of the market, and the percent increase in salaries and payroll from last year to this year. The fact that some of these ranges are up on the high end, a high dollar amount or a high percentage, the correlation of salary from 2021 to 2022, I believe, was only up 3 or 4% from the finance.
That's
committee.
right. I mean, that's what we budget for. We do compensate them with bonuses from time to time for exceptional work, but generally that's right, 0 to 3% merit and only merit.
Which
Just because
in
your
my
range
mind
moves, yeah,
is not a very high increase relative to the marketplace in 2022.
that's true as well.
I make a comment on this. What this shows to me is actually proactive thinking on the part of the administration, because unfortunately in my line of business, what you see is employers reacting to market pressures after they've already become a pressure, after you start to lose good people. By going out and making these decisions in advance, hopefully, of when we're feeling those kinds of pressures, we've made decisions that aren't person-based, they're market-based, and we're doing the work in advance of it being an emotional decision or a difficult decision in light of a competitive situation. So these numbers are, especially the one that you pointed out, Trustee Brown, are large, but in the hiring market that we're in right now, it shows to me some proactive management of expectations and of our staff.
I think thank you. We're trying to attract and retain good folks, and we've been able to do that. And we are a small organization, and that has gotten smaller. When I first came here, we had 54 full-time regular employees. We now have 33. So, the idea that we've been doing more with less, and a conscious effort to take dollars out of operations and put them in capital, I mean, that has continued. So to your point, I believe we've been trying to do that, and where we see opportunities to outsource and find ways to save dollars, take them out of the operations bucket, put it in the capital, we're trying. And we recommend them when we see them. That makes sense.
Thank you. So those were good questions, Kate. Thank you. And to this point, Drew and I already had conversations about how can we be creative to shift the way we provide services and provide better services with maybe less capital outlay. But basically, that is the plan. Okay, and I've seen that happening with trash collection, for example, since I've been here, and I've seen better service with less resources in our city services. So thank you. This is a roll call, I believe.
Yeah, roll call vote.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Ryder?
Aye.
Trustee Ingemann?
Aye.
Trustee Briand?
No.
Trustee Fisher?
Aye.
Trustee Markey?
Aye.
Trustee Rappin?
Aye.
Thank you. The next item is item number 18. This is a resolution honoring the public service of Lake Forest, Lake Bluff Chamber of Commerce Executive Director, Joanna Rolek. So I understand that Joanna will not be here with us today due to a family matter. And to this effect, I would like to ask for a motion to continue this resolution to the next meeting.
So moved.
Second. Yeah, no, it's Terrence.
Erin and first and Steve second. Thank you.
Okay.
Fine, I'll switch next. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. The motion passes. Next, item number 19, a resolution renewing, restating, and amending resolution number 2020-31 regarding outdoor food and beverage service for Block 1. Is there a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved.
Thank you. Second.
Second.
Of the many businesses within the village that were adversely affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, food and beverage service establishments were particularly hard hit, as noted by the village board over the past 2 years, FBSCs are crucial parts of a social and economic fabric of a village and worked diligently and creatively to continue operations and provide service to residents of a village and neighboring communities. Through the pandemic, the village has recognized that strict enforcement of certain requirements of the Lake Bluff Municipal Code that would otherwise apply to outdoor service may not be practicable or desirable. To that end, on May 27, 2020, the village passed resolution number 2020-31 to authorize FBSCs to use village streets and sidewalks for outdoor service until the earlier of 1, the governor authorizations for restaurants to resume indoor dining, and 2, 90 days from its effective date. As you may recall, an informal survey of Block 1 tenants and a community-wide downtown streetscape poll found general support for this approach. In early October 2021, Block 1 FBSCs requested the village to extend use of village property until December 2022, and at its October 25, 2021 regular meeting, the village board unanimously agreed to allow the tent to remain and use of the public way for outdoor dining until the end of May. On March 28, 2022, the village board discussed a request from Block 1 FBSCs to further extend use of the village property until September 30, 2022. By the conclusion of a COW meeting, a consensus was reached to shift the outdoor dining area to the north side of East Scranton, Block 1, into the parallel parking stalls along the curb line and to return East Scranton Avenue to a two-way traffic. Should the board approve the attached resolution, staff will work with the Block 1 FBSCs to create an outdoor dining layout that simulates the village board-approved Block 1 concept plan as much as possible and includes beautification of the outdoor dining area by the merchants. Comments?
You know what, I just want to make a comment, which is I'm grateful for the robust discussion that we've been having around this issue, and particularly I want to thank Kate for the discussion that you inspire, because it made me think a lot more about how we do become, I don't want to use the word blind, but I know that I personally have just gotten used to the tent, and I spent the last several weeks thinking about the tent, and that it really doesn't represent permanence and an investment in the community. And I want to find the way that we support outdoor interaction and dining and robust participation outside and continuing to grow our downtown commerce. But I am really grateful that Kate pushed us on that discussion, because I think we're headed in the right direction to find less temporary, more meaningful solutions to those problems. So for what it's worth, thank you, Kate.
Thank you.
Anybody else on the board?
I'll chime in. I think it's great. I really appreciate, seeing this with some graphics. And, I was very interested in understanding the square foot, of what we had last year, which looks like it was roughly 5,400 square feet versus what we're going to have this year, which is about 1,100 square feet. It's about 25% of what we had last year. My understanding was there were many nights last year where that 4,200 square feet was 50%, 75% full. So shrinking that, to a much lower number, to me says many, many nights there's going to be a lot of people that were coming last year that simply aren't going to be able to find a place to sit. And when I look back at COVID, there are some great learnings that we had, right? So everybody knows that now we can work Zoom, we can work remotely, I think about Ravinia and the fact that they put squares on the lawn and figured out, well, you can have a reserved square on the lawn and you can charge twice as much for it. Well, there's a learning. There are a lot of good things that came out of COVID in terms of learnings, not COVID itself. And I think what Lake Bluff learned through the numbers of people were residents and other people really like outdoor dining. And we saw that in the data beforehand, and then we saw it in the actual number of people that were there. So I really like where this is going. I like being on the right side of the street, which is the north side of the street where the restaurants are. I really like the image that we don't have here, but that I saw earlier today on the plantings to beautify the way that our outdoor dining space is going to be. But I do not think that we have enough space. I don't think taking 25% of the space that we had last year, it leaves too many people not coming to our community and not enjoying our outdoor space. So my opinion would be, I would much rather, if we're gonna test our way to something more permanent, I'd rather start with a larger space and see how that goes by adding more space, maybe another 1,000 square feet, or maybe a little bit less. And then back off to something smaller if we need to, or determine when we do something permanent that it needs to be a larger space. But the demand is there, it's what people want, and I hate to go from, to a quarter of the space that we had last year. That's my opinion.
I'll just say, Steve, though, that last year we were not as comfortable eating indoors as we likely will be this summer. I wasn't. I hadn't eaten indoors until pretty recently. So I think that might offset a bit. And I respect where you're coming from, but I think it might be less of a problem than we are anticipating.
I'd like to add to, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. That I feel like the idea of having the seating in the parallel parking spots is a nice compromise with the farmers market. I know the farmers market needs to use some of that space on Scranton on Block 1 during the summer. And so, we should be cognizant of that they need some space back there. So I think it's a nice compromise, and I think it gives us a chance to see, like Taryn's saying, if people shift and start to eat indoors a little bit more this summer or not. But I think it also gives us an idea of populating the north side of the street and what that feels like.
I'll add to that and say that although the green area of 5450 that's represented there goes all the way to, from one end of the block to the other, the actual use area is actually significantly smaller in my estimation than what's shown there. So I'm not as concerned about shrinking from 5,400 to 1,100. Just looking at this overrepresents, I think, what was actually used as dining space. But I think that the blue area ought to be considered temporary as an experiment, and I'm comfortable with that, as Joyce says, as a compromise, and it's something that will give us a much better idea about how this layout works than we have currently.
Thank you, Susan. Okay.
So I went and, because, as you all know from the previous meeting, I'm in favor of option 2, which is just going back to things the way they were before. But because people were enthusiastic about using the parallel parking spaces, I took the liberty of going to Glencoe and Highwood, because both of those had been mentioned previously. So to understand why they needed the parking spaces, because you have to understand why something is happening in order to really appreciate the rationale behind it. In the case of Highwood, their sidewalks are only 10 feet deep, and ours are 18 feet deep. So they have to use the parking spaces because the sidewalks can't accommodate as many tables. So that's pretty straightforward. In the case of Glencoe, I went to Guildhall twice to dine and to measure. Got some beautiful photographs too of what they've done, which, by the way, I had about a 20-minute conversation with the manager, completely on the restaurant. They paid for everything, and they did a superb job. So the village did not put up concrete barriers or anything. It was all Guildhall. But their sidewalks are only 14 feet deep, can only accommodate one row of tables. So we have a really deep sidewalk there. It's already 18 feet deep, so we can accommodate a lot of people. And if you recall from the last meeting, Greg from Mavery was satisfied with just the sidewalk because he has a very, very, very small kitchen. So last summer, he didn't have anybody inside, so he could serve outside, and that was about the same square footage as his indoor space and the sidewalk. But I also wanted to just point out something else, because I had mentioned this before. The sidewalks on Block 1 are the same depth as the sidewalks on Block 2. So we are accommodating the exact same number of tables around Innovasi, so in terms of depth, that we would be here. So I think in all fairness, we're taking up spaces we don't have. Highwood and Glencoe have tons of municipal parking within close walking distance. We don't. So I'm really anxious to get back to things. I think the vaccine has made things different. But I was also noticed in Rob Douglas's comments that Drew forwarded to us that how to pay for any beautification here so it doesn't look like Checkpoint Charlie. We're still up in the air. That has to be straightened out. But I think that while I appreciate people's desire to come uptown, I think we actually have plenty of space for both of the restaurateurs, brewery, bee market that's there, because there's a limit to how many people you can serve when you're working in a kitchen as small as what Mavery has. So I get the concept, but I still think we can't afford to lose those spaces, and quite frankly, I'm not sure it's fair to the other people that are in that building. So I'm for number 2.
Thank you, Kate. If anybody else has to make a comment, I would like to, contrary to my tradition, to actually make a comment. Please, Barb.
I, again, welcome this opportunity as being a unique way to test kind of this whole idea. We're going to learn a lot. We may land somewhere, closer to one of these opinions, and what better way to find out than by actually doing it? It just makes sense. So I think this is the essence of compromise, and it's going to be data-driven, and it just makes sense. So let's do it.
Thank you.
I have one question. Have we gotten any feedback from the farmers market folks as to the workability of the north side of the street being tables as opposed to the south side? They were very concerned about maintaining the tent on the south side, right?
Their intent was, we want to get rid of a tent, we want to regain our two-way, and we want to regain the parking places on the south side.
On the south side. So as far as we know, the freeing up the south side is sufficient for them to continue the farmers market? As far as, do we have any?
Yes, is the answer. I mean, I talked with Tony Swanton, the chair of that committee, and ideally, it would go back to the way it was. They've been very flexible in working with it, and I mean, they're tents that come in, they can set them up. They've been very creative ideas have come about from the committee to find ways to make it all work. I'm sure if you told them that we're going to go back, we're going to leave it like it is, they would figure out a way to make it work, even though they don't want to do that, right? They've said that.
Yeah.
But I think they could, and what they've shown, this parklet concept that's being discussed at the moment, that's their ideal situation is it all goes away, but they can work with this, is what I was told by Pony.
Okay.
So
Thanks.
I'd like to make a comment to the group here tonight, because I walked away from the COW 2 weeks ago thinking, well, yes, we need to test the other dining layout that simulates the village board approved Block 1 concept and so on, to actually see how that's going to work. We're going to spend about $800,000. We should see if it works ahead of time, and this is smart. But also left thinking there's something missing. And the thing that is missing is, and I'm very sensitive to what Kate said, that is business equity or equity in this case, where it's not fair to provide a whole space to two businesses while the other businesses in town do not have the same opportunity completely. Fairness is very important to me. And in that case, yes, I agree with Kate. But there is one more thing we might not have discussed, that is our community changed. we discovered, I'm European, so it's probably not fair, but our community discovered we can eat outside, we can meet outside, and Block 1 became a meeting space. I have taken pictures of people being outside drinking or being there, or kids playing, or being just there to be with friends. Okay, it's not going to a restaurant to meet inside, then an hour and a half we're done. Those are people that stayed there the afternoon. And that is different. And to Kate's point, no, actually I'm not here to keep it the way it was before. I'm here to adapt to the way we want it to be today. And to that extent, yes, larger sidewalk, 18 feet as opposed to 10 feet, fine. But I'm actually more toward getting it even bigger. This is the place where we have concerts. This is the place where we have people gathering. This is where our community is being a community. And to that extent, I don't like the two-way. I prefer a one-way because it's more space. It's more place for all people. We don't have to wait for a block party to all meet. We can meet anytime we want because we have a space to meet as a group, meet friends, or dine, or drink, or whatever else that makes us a community. And to that extent, I'm absolutely completely for testing it. But I'm also for more testing it that is as a one-way as opposed to a two-way. And that would be my comment.
Have we had any feedback from the bank as far as the loading zone? That seemed like a valid concern of, if it is a one-way, would the truck still be able to pull in to load? How will that impact?
I reached out, I did not get a call back,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
I think you could design it where you can maintain that space completely open in front of the bank, or we can continue to have conversations with them and try to figure it out too, right? It's very fluid.
I don't know that we were considering not having that space open. I think it was more about the angle and the turn radius. Am I right, Kate, what you were referencing, or?
No, a one-way street, depending on the direction, makes that problematic not only for them, but for delivery trucks, where the tailgate of the truck is going to come out onto Sheridan Road. I don't think you're going to get a lot of agreement from somebody doing deliveries to these restaurants that they want their driver heading out into oncoming traffic. We had a consensus that two-way, everybody, we had an engineer up here, Mickey Collins, everybody's going two-way. They're undoing it. Glencoe, the entirety of it is two-way. Everybody, it's just, I thought that was a done deal. That we had agreed from a safety perspective, and we don't want do not enter signs, welcome to our town, but don't come in. So no, I think, Drew, I may be able to help you on the Wintrust aspect in terms of getting in touch with the Director of Operations for Retail Banking. But in terms of that, I just think that's creating a problem where none currently exists. If we want thriving business, you can't make it hard to deliver stuff to restaurants.
How do they do it?
They do it now, Steve, facing westbound, so the tailgate is facing eastbound, and the guy is walking not into a traffic that's going perpendicular to him. That's just dangerous.
Is this, I read this correctly, that this, what we would be voting on right now goes through November 1st of this year, November 1st, 2022. Did I read that correctly?
I think that, yes, that's what the resolution
Okay,
includes. Yeah.
so we're essentially looking at what, like the next, what is that, 6 months?
June through the end of October.
Okay, so I guess my opinion, it hasn't changed. I feel like we should try the parklets. It's a good compromise. Let's see what people say. Maybe people come back to us and say, like, we miss all that space. We want more space. Maybe no one cares. We don't know. Maybe we hear from the restaurants that they actually couldn't handle more space, that it's too hard because now they're gonna have people inside and outside. But I think it gives us the opportunity. I'm concerned about making it a one-way for the very things that Kate is mentioning. I think the bank needs to have some access, and we need to have some access through there for deliveries and such. And we've already heard from Rob Douglas that when it was a one-way, there were problems with trucks and such cutting through the back of the parking lot behind there. So I just think that this is a good compromise, kind of checks all the boxes for us to just see, like, hey, what's the interest level? We've had block parties previous to COVID where we just blocked off the street. It was just a regular street. We blocked it off and people ran around and did their thing. So I feel like maybe we're taking baby steps, but it's good to get the feedback rather than all of a sudden just completely shift the street. It's just my opinion.
I wanted to make a comment too about the expanded space on this corner right here. We've kind of outlined some as public, meaning it's not for a specific restaurant, which I'm very excited about. If there is overflow on kind of block one-ish demand that isn't specific to a restaurant, maybe it expands more into people saying, here's a beautiful village green, maybe we spend more time on the village green. I don't know, it might not. But I think that this is a good time to reinstate the two-way, to do the parklet idea for a little bit of an expansion of a place for people to sit, and then see how that corner interacts with the corner that we just invested a lot in, and then see if the village green is kind of brought into a little action too. I think this is gonna be a learning opportunity. I think the village green is something very unique that a lot of people don't have, that we do have, and I do think that on times where we're having, Bluffinia, it's highly utilized. Maybe now that people were on the south side, maybe that will kind of be introduced as, oh, let's hang out over there as well. So let's see how it goes. That's what I think.
Regis, could I ask a question? Drew, is your feeling that that if there were barriers around those parallel parking spaces, that they would be paid for, everything now would be exclusively paid for by the entities that want it, and that the village would no longer, like, we're not providing anything? Is that correct?
I think,
Because, I'm sorry, let me add on, and sorry, the concrete barriers that are out there now are village,
yes.
and the horses are village, so that we're getting out of the business of that and putting that on the business owner who wants this, so that the taxpayer is not subsidizing this, because I think those are the comments I've been getting, is that people are, whatever they want to do outside, they certainly don't want to be subsidizing them. So I just wanted to know where things stood with that.
Yeah, my initial conversations with the businesses and the building owner was the village has these assets available. If they wanted to utilize them, we already have acquired them. That's what they were required for, right? So if you wanted to make use of them, I haven't heard that they actually want to use the concrete yet. Before that, we had plastic, like, versions of the concrete ones that are filled with water, but you can't use those in the winter. Right. And so we took those away and replaced them because we had concerns about safety, so we put up the concrete ones. Granted, not the most attractive things, obviously, and we've dealt with that. But I think right now the goal was to say, restaurants, the board will grant you this footprint, but the beautification, the improvements are on you.
Yeah.
The safety, too?
Well, if they, again, going back to, if you need these concrete barriers to do it, then we would offer those up, because we already have them. It's just sliding them across the street, right? And there's also the plant, there was like, I think 4 planters the village purchased with the garden club that were put out there for beautification, that if they want those, I think we can offer them as well. I mean, they're already there, we can reuse them, but that was it. And I think right now, Rob Douglas's plan doesn't look like it includes those, but that's what he's working on right now.
The only reason I ask is that, just to make a quick point, if you haven't been to Guildhall and Glencoe, I suggest you go. They did a gorgeous job, but the reason I asked is because they paid for everything so they could paint it.
Oh.
And it looked really beautiful. They put their logo on it, and then on the top, so it doesn't have that flare at the bottom, or the orange stripes, whatever, but it's safe, but then it's boxwood, it's beautiful, so it's very tastefully done, really classy. And I just thought that looks so much more attractive, but that should be on them, because we may want those concrete barriers, and we wouldn't want them to have been painted, but if they really wanted to make it beautiful.
You can wrap them. I mean, there's different things
Or
you
you
can do.
can wrap them.
Yeah, there's
But
different
you
things
know what
can
I'm
do.
saying?
I
Like,
do.
I just
Yeah.
hope that at some point we make this their responsibility.
And I think that's the good point, is at some point. And here we are looking at, a 6-month thing that we're trying out.
I guess I should have said now.
Well, I just think that we may be kind of doing a little bit of a cobbled together plan, kind of mocking things up still. I would appreciate an investment that a business owner wants to put in, but knowing that they're not gonna do what would look as much as a beautiful finished plan if we say, hey, we're gonna do this through September, October, and then it may be that it's off and we're not doing it at all.
My recollection, though, was that, I'm sorry, Regis. My recollection from our last meeting was that we really did want beautification and were expecting
Yes.
the businesses.
Yes.
That it wouldn't be as,
But, I mean, I'm looking at Kate's version, and it sounds like, boxwood plantings and, this.
Right, right.
There's a different level, annuals versus, shrubbery, and I'm just saying that if this were permanent, it's gonna take a lot of time and design, and it'll end up looking, I'm sure, fabulous. But I just don't know that we need to do that for a 6-month trial. That's all. I want it all to succeed. I want it as beautiful and tasteful as what Kate says, and I appreciate the work that has been done. So let's draft off what somebody else has already done to figure out how to make it really sing. And I love that, but you often talk about putting the cart before the horse. I think this is the time to do our mock-up and figure it out. It's not what it was, and it's not what it's eventually permanently going to be, but we're in that mock-up stage. So
Thank you.
that's what
So
I'm
we
saying.
talked about, Drew, we talked about having planters, large planters. I mean, and in that case, the planters are very large planters. Bless you. But they are not, I wouldn't assume they are the responsibility of the businesses, because the planters also serve a function of safety. Now, to your point, the large planters, I'm not sure we would invest in boxwood. That might be a lot more expensive than annuals, for example. I mean, for that season, annuals or whatever else that might be temporary. What is our plan for that? Can we put our hands on the planters? That would be the function of those barriers. I mean, and this is in the optics of having emulating what we could actually achieve for next year, for example.
I think the answer is yes, but if I'm hearing the folks, it's that the village shouldn't expend any more funds, use the assets that are already available, offer them up, and work with them, the restaurateurs, to improve it and beautify it, and that's what we're talking about. So it could include the large planters we already have, but we're not gonna buy any more. They can use them, and then design this plan that simulates as closely as possible this concept plan. Because you guys may look at it at the end of November and say, gosh, that worked, or you know what? Let's really look at it and try it one way. You may decide to do that next summer, so, I mean, that could be an outcome.
How many planters do we have today?
3, 4, 5, it's a small number.
40 feet deep, so good.
So one thing that Barbara just mentioned about the catty corner to Block 1 that we just did, that is public land, and that's a permanent decision, and so, we obviously spent money on that, but I certainly wouldn't have voted for it if we'd said, and then it's going to be the restaurateurs that can use it exclusively, right? So this 6-month period, maybe we see our way clear to saying this is exclusively theirs, but if we're to spend money, right, $1,000 million or whatever the number is for streetscape, isn't that our property? And isn't it the property of the individuals who want to picnic there? To sit there the way they could sit at the round area over by Innovasi? Again, I think for 6 months, we let them put the barriers up, that they can treat it as de facto exclusively their property, but think about it from now on. Are we going to build them the space, permanent space going forward? I don't know that we are. It seems like it's more akin to the corner space that we put outside of Innovasi. They still have their sidewalk, the public has the corner. And
Yes.
anyway, so maybe for 6 months we continue this, but I think we have to think about future state. If we block those 4 parking spaces, is that going to redound to the sole benefit of the property owners and the restaurateurs, or is that public property that we're going to allow them to take part in or use part of during the season. I don't, just something to think about.
So let me put the conversation back on this resolution tracks. So we talked about a few things, and the objective is here to a dining layout that simulates the village board approved Block 1 concept. Okay, this is our goal. So I should ask, so Drew has possibilities in front of us. We need to give directions to Drew. There is, and we need basically to help the staff. I mean, giving directions here at this point. So, one way, two way, north side, and west side or east side on the one way, for example, those are possibilities. We need to care for the village market, the farmers market, to help them doing business. We need to care for the bank for doing a safe work for their banking operations, retail banking operations. What else do we need to care for? Is that it?
Regis, I think that Trustee Ryder makes a really good point. I really do. The green, I'll just use this, sorry, public people that are watching, but there's the green here that was where the tent currently is. That was for anybody. You could sit in it regardless of whether you were, whatever you were doing, those picnic tables, all that space. And I agree. I think that what we're taking public space, like Trustee Ankerman mentions the area that is in front of Innovasi, but is not for use for Innovasi, it's public, the green, et cetera. If we have I think this is a question that we have to nail down because you're asking how to direct staff. There has to be a directive given that this is for Mavory and the brewery, or whoever's asking. Greg from the Mavory said he doesn't mind just using the sidewalk. So are we just doing this for Lake Bluff Brewery and just in the same, and that then was my point. But I think we need to straighten that out because I agree. I think that's if we're blocking off public space, that implies, and an inference could be drawn, that that's for anybody. And then how is the brewery going to receive that? They're going to think it's for them.
So my point earlier on was we're building community. We're doing community building, I should say. The businesses are helping us building that community. That means the brewery and Mavory's. They're doing a fine job. The space is a community space. That means this is the citizen space as opposed to exclusive use of the businesses. Okay?
Oh,
Can I clarify something, just so everybody knows? So the space, the green area, and Glenn, would you put that up for people who are
watching at home.
participating virtually? Because there's a hand raised, just so you know.
Okay.
But a portion, the easternmost area was offered up to be market. They never put any tables out there. The area adjacent to that, moving west, across from Mavory's, was used exclusively by Mavory's. And then the tent area was used exclusively by the brewery, and the points to the furthest west where there was open picnic tables, those were kind of shared areas. In the very beginning of the pandemic, Donati set up a truck there, and they asked if they could come out and participate as a local Lake Bluff business. We said yes. They went in there and found out that wasn't fruitful for them. But that area became, on very busy nights, is kind of a shared space. Everybody went there and used those areas on the far west side. That was, we started early when we started planning this with the restaurants. They were like, we're gonna need to know which tables are ours to bus, and that's the restaurateurs decided we need to partition this off so we know who's who and who can manage what space, and we knew who were serving alcohol and we weren't, and so it was a necessity to make it partitioned, if you will. So I think right now the restaurateurs, both Greg from Durham from Mavory's and Mike Dornicker from Lake Bluff Brewery, and I did have a conversation with Vade from B Market about, this area is being set up for you all, and that you'll work and figure that out, and that's what they're doing. They're starting working through that with Rob Douglas, the building owner operator. So just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you.
When this streetscape was developed in a previous version of what Block 1 might look like, there was a mirroring aspect of this corner public space. And in addition to that other expansion. And so, there are so many infinite versions, and we could talk till we're sick. But if we want to create something that in actuality, just by walking up to the space, you can kind of tell that it's public, it is harder to tell when that space is right next to bussed tables and waiters, coming to these tables. So how does it look different? How is it designated as public? Well, on the corner by Innovasi, it's going to have different places to be. It's going to be a more of a chair as opposed to a table where you could just take your food and sit and eat. It's going to visually be very different. So it is, by definition, a public space, and it's kind of intuitive. I understand that having it just look different defines whether it really is public or not. You have to kind of get it just by walking up to the space. So what we've kind of ended up with version, I think we're up to version X. With version X, we don't have a clearly defined public space. It was part of one of the many other iterations, and we kind of felt like, oh my goodness, this is a lot. We don't want to commit, we don't want to do all that. I love that we have this public space. We're going to see how it feels and what it looks like. I wish in my perfect planet that I could invent how to make some smaller version of a true public space that doesn't look like it's part of somebody else's there, without just being too outrageous and without just like creating a bunch of staff work to-dos. Because I agree, it needs to be just so intuitive that, oh yeah, I can just be there. That's okay. I'm not ordering a beer, but it doesn't matter. I've got my dog and that's okay, or whatever.
So in public spaces in Europe, what you'll see, especially in Denmark, and they do a good job for that, if you have 30 feet of walk space, sidewalk, you'll see that you have restaurant operators with their tables, chairs, and you have a trailer, like a little fence, something that you can see that this is their tables, and on the other side of the fence is public space. People might continue drinking and eating on the public space, but you know that you can stand here with your dog if you wish so.
Right, and I like
think,
that.
And my point is, I don't really so much care about who is what, but I care about the community aspect of it. I want to continue having people being there. That would be my point.
Yes, and my point is that, Drew, is there a way to kind of just do a light version of something that mirrors the other corner that we can, we're trying to test this out before we change all the cement, right?
May I ask maybe a follow-up? Sorry.
Kate, yes.
I'm kind of hung up. This was a specific request from the brewery, so their expectation is this is for them. So this, no offense, but this talk of experimenting with something we probably won't get the grant money for, according to Drew, so we still have to vote on it. That's the cart before the horse is even born. I get the whole idea of community. We have a gorgeous village green that we spend a lot of money maintaining. That's community. I think we've gotten real caught up in this, but one of the things I'm concerned about is if we're talking about what's intuitive, people's intuition now is if there are barricades in front of a brewery and a restaurant, based on all the experience they've had over the last 2 years, that is for those two businesses. That isn't just for anybody to waltz up and sit down. And it's going to infuriate these guys, not to mention confuse the servers, et cetera. This has gotten really complicated, which is why option 2 is so much easier. Just go back to the sidewalk, and then if we get the grant money, we can have this conversation again. But we are creating so much complicated, I just don't get it. I understand what you're trying to do, but I think we're going to create a lot of confusion where there needs to be none. So again, number 2 makes your life a lot easier.
I think we're just making it more complicated than it really needs to be. Like, I think we can open up these parklets and see how it works. I think, yes, the brewery came to us and asked us about it, but I also think we're hearing from community members that they enjoyed being outside. I don't think it's that complicated. Okay. I mean, I think we can try it.
Thank you. I want to achieve clarity because I'm probably not helping on the clarity aspect of this conversation. So can you help us with summarizing, because I'm lost.
I think the only nuance I guess that I would maybe recommend you talk about is what's on the table is a resolution with, and there's a motion and a second to approve what's in front of you, which is essentially the pink and blue, right? You're saying we're gonna give them the parklets. I will work with them to come up with a plan that they would fund with access to some of our assets that we've already acquired. And then the only nuance to that is if you have a concern about the beautification, you could have me work with the ABR on what that finally looks like. And that would be the only little nuance to this. But the resolution is in front of you, I think, is the general consensus of folks. And then you can always revisit it at the conclusion. If you want to do something different, you can always come back sooner. If you find out, we can report, hey, this is a problem, or this is not a problem.
And so the resolution would be effective November 2022.
It'll be effective June 1 through the end of October.
To the end of October, November 1st. And it would be a test to see how the Block 1 redesign would actually function. And the beautification will be for the duration of the summer.
I'm sorry, the beautification would be what?
For the duration of a summer to see how this would fare with our community.
And Drew, your comment on the beautification, I mean, I feel like we should see what the beautification, or see a design of what the beautification, or an element, right? Because we know what's existing on the south side of the street is not acceptable. There's a lot of people in our community complaining about that. So I think we owe it to the community to make sure that this is not going to look like that.
Yeah, and obviously you can work with give that to the ABR to figure out, or you guys can see it yourself. You want to come back and see it, whatever you want to do.
Okay, so the
that
ABR,
was
the
the
ABR
nuance.
would come back to us before this becomes effective.
You can approve it, and you can amend this resolution to have that, work through that, and that it wouldn't be allowed until such a time that the ABR approved a plan.
Got it.
And that you can ultimately see a recommend, if you want to have that control and see it again, you're welcome to do that, or you can let the ABR handle it and just have them make the decision independently.
Okay. So can I make an amendment to this, which would be to approve this design as it is now, pending a acceptable design from the ABR in terms of beautification?
When you point at this, which design are we talking about? The blue, the pink and the blue.
We're talking about the proposal that's in front of us.
Pink and blue.
Which is the parklet
Which is
option.
Parklet option,
Yeah.
okay.
So we have a motion on the table.
And to clarify that, you want the ABR to recommend something back to this body that you guys would see. Okay.
And so that motion would be for pink and blue with a recommendation from the ABR.
Two ways.
With final approval by the
two-way
board.
street.
And two-way street.
Yep.
Do I have a second on this?
Second.
Thank you. Okay,
Do we need to
Are
vote?
we voting?
so now we see the roll call, right?
No, it's all in favor of voice vote, right?
Okay, so it's a voice vote?
Yeah.
So
Oh, I'm sorry, before you do that, sorry. You do have somebody who was on this call.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Don't forget that.
Drew, do we have anybody online who would like to make a comment?
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's mad at me.
Mr. Hallenstein? Hold on, let's see.
Got the wrong border.
Wrong writer.
He's got to unmute himself. Was he, are you soon?
To the
Here we
board.
go, here we go.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Hallenstein?
Yeah, my apologies. I accidentally hit the raise hand.
Nope.
Sorry.
You're with the village
Continue.
board. Yeah.
Yep. Sorry.
Oh, so you don't have any public comment on this item then?
No, nope.
Okay.
High five.
Just a high
Please.
five.
Yep.
So thank you. So this is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
No.
Thank you. The resolution carries. I think this is important. This is our community, so the discussion is worth any second of it. Thank you. Item number 20, the next item would be a resolution authorizing a contract with Clark Environmental Mosquito Management for a mosquito control program from 2022 to 2024. Is there a motion to approve a resolution?
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you. Since 1951, mosquito control services within the village's corporate limits have been provided by the Bluff Mosquito Abatement District, LBMAD. The LBMAD was an independent unit of government covering a 6.25 square mile jurisdiction, including 13,000 residents in Lake Bluff, Green Oaks, North Chicago, and the unincorporated communities of Norwood and Abbott Park. The district was governed by 5 members appointed by the Lake County Board and funded through a property tax levy, but Lake County is close to completing the dissolution process of the LBMAD, and it is expected to cease all operations in 2022. As previously discussed, the village has been planning to continue certain mosquito abatement services in order to promote the public health and safety of the village and its residents. To that end, the village issued a request for proposals on February 23rd, 2022 for the 2022, 2023, and 2024 Lake Bluff Mosquito Control Program that contemplates customer service, public education, surveillance, larva control, and adult mosquito control services. This process yielded 2 proposals, which were opened on March 24, 2022. After 1, reviewing the proposals, and 2, consulting with former member of the LBMAD, the Village Sustainability and Community Enhancement Ad hoc Committee, the Executive Director of the North Shore Mosquito Abatement District, and considering preliminary Village Board comments, staff recommends a village contract with Clark Mosquito Management for 1, administration and surveillance for $4,200, larvae controls for $24,898, and adult control $11,001, which will be utilized only if, when determined in consultation with Clark. Clark has also indicated that they will work with the village regarding the necessity of all their services to include airborne larval control. At the conclusion of the first year of the program, the village will work with Clark and determine what, and if any, changes are necessary to the scope of work moving forward. Questions and comments on the board?
Drew, I was wondering if you could, I read through and I take a great interest in the impact of any kind of, the impact of abatement and treatments on the environment. And I did notice that the tools that Clark uses seem to have some, positive feedback or positive recognition for being organic or naturally occurring. Do we know for certain that those are I'll just stop talking and ask, can you weigh in a little bit more on this? Because it is a concern for me.
Sure, and I'll start off, and then I'll ask George Ballas, who's the, with Clark, who is the recommended contractor, to get into more details. But generally speaking, across the North Shore and everywhere, folks who are engaging in mosquito abatement services are using a similar list of chemicals, right? The idea, and they're trying to use chemicals that are, of course, approved by state and federal agencies, and also, to the extent that they can, is make them as safe for all other species out there, right? Humans, plants, butterflies, whatever they, whatever's out there. They don't want to do something that rocks Mother Nature's universe, so to speak. So they're all chosen in that regard, but everybody's using the same things. George, could you talk about maybe some, because I know there's other agencies, like I talked about the North Shore Mosquito Abatement District. I had multiple conversations with their executive director. They're using products that Clark makes too. Clark, I'm sorry, George, could you talk about that, please?
Yes, thank you for allowing me to come in virtually today. I'm just coming out of another public meeting, so I appreciate that. The products that are being utilized or recommended for use in this district or in the village now are products that are Organic Material Review Institute listed, which means they can be used in and around organic farms and gardens. Those are not traditional farms and gardens that you would have in your own homes, but this would be the same areas where USDA fruits or vegetables would be grown. We're able to use that, and it's based on two items, very low toxicity and very low effect on the environment. And part of that is the breakdown of the product and how quickly it occurs in the environment, and also how specific it is to the actual organisms that we're trying to, in this case, mosquito larvae kill.
Can I just ask, George, can I ask you a follow-up? Because I was looking and I was particularly interested in, there was sort of a caveat that I read that says, in reference to the product that's used for adult mosquito control, it says the US EPA has assessed these chemicals and found that when used according to label directions, that they do not pose unreasonable risk to public health and the environment. And that concerns me. I just want to know a little bit more about what does that mean? How do we categorize unreasonable versus reasonable risk? And what does it mean to use according to the label directions?
So all products have an application rate, which allows products to be used within a certain environment. So in this case, the products that we're utilizing are labeled for use in residential and recreation areas. There's that dosage rate that's specific for those applications. So for instance, for adult mosquito control, which is I believe what you're speaking of here, the applications are made during the evening hours. And so there's a certain amount of insecticide that's put out into the environment to come in contact with flying mosquitoes at that time. So the reason why it's a reasonable risk is that when applications are made according to what the US EPA label is, that they don't find other risks that they would see with these products if used in large amounts. So natural pyrethrum does have the ability to actually kill other items. But at this application rate at this time, what we're looking at is insects of a certain weight class, and generally mosquitoes and midge flies would be of that weight class, would be affected by this product at that moment. And so each product has many, many classifications and can be utilized for many, many different things, but they are dosage specific and timing specific for insects of a certain weight class, and that's how you utilize those appropriately. If you've read through the pamphlet at about page 250, I believe, in your packet, there's a whole discussion of our sustainability efforts. And the reason why these products were manufactured is because we do understand that mosquito control, there's a lot of questions regarding specific things like pollinators and things of that sort. These products are the products on the market that can be utilized for villages just like yourself that have questions about pollinators. And what we're trying to do is use a product that would be effective against mosquitoes and not have the effects against what we'll call off-target or non-target.
So I have a quick question, George. If we, in your experience, if we are somewhat aggressive in the larva control, then how often do you have to actually spray for adult control? Kind of if we nip it in the bud early in the season and we're following the larva control a little bit more frequently, and is that better for the environment?
It allows us to control more mosquitoes at one time. So you can think of water bodies are where mosquitoes breed. And so there are a more concentrated number of mosquitoes in those smaller water bodies. And so if we can treat them using larvicides, that's the most effective way to control mosquitoes. However, insects, mosquitoes in this case, fly different distances. So adult mosquito control may be necessary, and it would be surveillance driven. That's why the first component of the program is actually collecting mosquitoes to determine the density and distribution, as well as the disease risk associated with those mosquitoes based on the types of mosquitoes that are in the area, as well as if they are testing positive for a virus such as West Nile virus. So larviciding aggressively helps us reduce the need for adult mosquito control. The village as a whole has been treated over the last 15 to 20 years, anywhere between 0 applications during a year, all the way up to the maximum, I believe, during a West Nile virus situation that we had in 2012. 4 times was the maximum amount of times that we treated. So in general, adult mosquito control is not the main component of the program. It's one of the components used when surveillance dictates its use.
Thank you.
Thanks.
George, could you just offer perspective in terms of communities that, the idea is not to have to use the chemical spray for the adult mosquitoes, but communities that have said, no, we're not going to do that under any circumstance? Is that a majority of them, a minority of them? Is it any perspective there?
There are probably on a single hand, maybe 1 or 2 communities that have no adult mosquito control component. There are communities that don't utilize mosquito control for what we'll call quality of life or nuisance mosquitoes. But most communities, when needed during disease risk, when West Nile virus risk amplifies, will utilize adult mosquito control. So adult mosquito control can be utilized on a less prominent role only for disease mechanisms. But most communities have some adult mosquito control mechanism in place that can be utilized when necessary based on surveillance.
And when you say 1 or 2, is that 1 or 2 out of 50 that you work with, or just trying to get some kind of?
1 or 2 out of 200 that we in the Chicago.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Kate? No?
I do. As you guys know, I work in landscaping, so I deal with clients a lot who have a lot of questions about pesticides, so I have to know something about them. And I just want to emphasize, and George, thanks for being here for answering questions. I have a few questions in a second. Natural does not equate with safe. Pyrethrins are a derivative of the chrysanthemum, but they are highly toxic to bees. They are very highly toxic to fish and aquatic invertebrates, and they are toxic in quantities to cats. So I just want to make sure we understand something. We have a beekeeping program. Now, this is not larvicide. This is the adult. This is. I was really surprised to see this, quite frankly, because I thought we had made it pretty clear that we were not interested in pursuing anything that had to do with fogging and in any regard, regardless of what anybody else is doing. Because, based on, George, you can answer this, but IDPH suggests that the most effective means of control and the highest priority should always be given to eliminating through larvicide, whether that's Aedes vexans or the Culex pipiens. Isn't that true? Especially Aedes vexans.
Yeah, that is correct. I mean, the main focus of every program should be in larval control or source reduction, yes.
Right. So, and I think the concern that some of the trustees have about aerial application is that it is highly toxic to non-target species, specifically pollinators. I know that the question of application and drift and other things matters, but I'm just curious. The Maris 3.0 in your own document says that it is highly toxic to bees when they're exposed. So we have a beekeeping program here, and I understand, Drew, that this is also extraterritorial, so it's also outside the village borders, correct? The contract.
It could be, right?
Could be,
That was for larvicidal treatments is what we were
Only.
talking. Yes.
Okay.
And that was aerial, though, because of the area, really talking about north of the sanctuary. There's a large property that's owned by IDOT, several hundred acres, that has been an area that the
Understood.
mosquito abatement has tried to attack in the past because it is such a large area that is wet and stays wet.
Understood. So that's my biggest concern here is that this is, we have a really serious pollinator problem, and while that may not seem important, it really, really is. I understand that there's not the same level of toxicity to human beings, but we have to be mindful of this environmentally as a whole. And I know that there have been comments previously about diseases, because the mosquitoes are vectors for diseases. But the other thing I just wanted to make note of is that really there were 7 diseases listed in this answer to this RFP, and really West Nile is the only one we need to really be worrying about on a large scale, because one doesn't even occur in the United States, but several of them don't have any occurrence. So I understand larvicidal treatment, I really do, but I just can't get behind anything that has any aerial aspect at all. It's not precise enough, and I think the environmental consequences are too grave.
Thank you, Kate. I am going to show my pro-environment slant. I'm sorry about that, guys, but the Europe lost half their birds, okay? And we have a bee problem in the US, and bees are the source of our food. If you guys want cereal, then you might want bees, for example. And I will advocate also for my wife who has asthma, and when we have a adult control fogging, she can't breathe for the next 3 days. So my question to Drew is, when do we trigger number 3, the adult control? When does that happen? Who is actually the one saying, okay, guys, we need number 3 to occur?
Yeah, and George, I'm going to ask you to talk about this. What's been contemplated and what most districts or entities that are engaging in mosquito abatement, when they choose to do adult side, it's because there's a certain count of mosquitoes present and also disease present. So George, you want to talk about that vector count you guys do?
Yeah, so I can address 2 things. One of them is recommendations can be made on any factor that the village chooses, and that's part of the conversation that we've had with Drew in the past year. The conversation that we're talking about here is on a disease risk factor. We would be looking at things like vector index or minimum infection rate. One of the traps that's actually within the village as part of this program, we'll be collecting mosquitoes on a weekly basis to test for West Nile virus. The actual just presence of the virus does not mean that adult mosquito control would occur, but what would happen is, based on a risk factor associated and developed by the Centers for Disease Control, would allow us to see what is called a vector index or a minimum infection rate, and that's when a recommendation for adult mosquito control would be utilized. With regards to the pollinator question, the reason why Maris 3.0 was recommended for the village is that while it is natural and natural can be toxic, natural does also mean that it breaks down fastest in the environment. And because the applications are made during the evening hours when pollinators are not active, exposure for this product is a contact-only insecticide. So the question of whether adult mosquito control can be performed even on areas where bees are present is correct. We can do applications during the evening hours, particularly if there is a risk for West Nile virus, without exposure to those bees that are in the area, because they are at that point not active. So again, this product must come in contact with them, and whether they're ground bees or whether they are honey bees, they would not be active during the evening hours. So if you're out right now at 9:04 in the area, we are doing an application just saying for this evening, bees do not fly at night. Pollinators do not fly at night in general. And the reason for the applications during the evening is because the mosquitoes are flying during the evening, and that's when they have to be contacted. But applications would be based on discussions with staff, and it would be based on minimum infection rate or vector index.
Okay.
What constitutes a risk of West Nile virus? What do we consider? What's the standard?
Well, the standard is on a vector index, it's between 1 and 3. Again, this is probably something that we could go into further discussions on showing where those are. But what it is basically a collection of mosquitoes and then determining how many out of the mosquitoes actually are positive. So if we collect during an evening, 100 mosquitoes are collected during that time, and we have 2 positive samples that come from that, a equation based on what was called, as I said, the vector index or the minimum infection rate is computed. And then we will see when there is an increased risk week over week to determine when an application would be recommended. As we've pointed out, for many years, there haven't been any adult mosquito control treatments in the village. And there's different reasons for that. Some years, whether they're drier years or years that we would have higher numbers of Culex mosquitoes. Birds are affected greatly by West Nile virus, and that's one of the reasons why West Nile virus is another reason to bring those numbers down. But what we're trying to do is use adult mosquito control as a tool, not the only tool. And as was brought up earlier, larviciding is the tool that we recommend first. It's also the tool that we'd recommend in conjunction with surveillance. But when there is a need for adult mosquito control based on risk, then that would be the reason why we'd utilize it here in the
Okay, so thank you for that answer, George. So, I mean, I would be curious to see as we approach summer when that index goes up and down, and if we could actually, Drew, if we could get these numbers to be communicated to the board so that we can actually see that. I mean, in my mind, I see that we have a public health risk with West Nile, and we have also a quality of life with the resident. If you guys remember last year, second week of August, I think, somewhere like that, we really had a mosquito problem.
Yeah.
I mean, it was impossible to walk outside. So I would love to get that communicated to the board so that we can wait on if that should be applied.
Got it. Right here.
Kate?
We've had 78 cases, according to the Lake County Health Department in Lake County since 1999. 78 cases.
I think,
But I just wanted to add one thing and a question for George. George, you're talking about bees?
Sorry, John.
Sorry, this was what I wanted to respond to, really, not the West Nile, because the statistics for West Nile just don't hold up the argument. This is quoting from your own document, George. The product is, this is Maris 3.0, is highly toxic to bees exposed to direct treatment on blooming crops or weeds. Is it on direct treatment to the bees or the crops and the weeds?
directly to the bees that are actively pollinating during that period. And that's why there would be no interaction of that sort under this program, because the applications are made during the evenings when bees are not pollinating.
How do you count for drift?
Drift is part of the actual application. So drift is an active part of the actual application, and the drift is actually there to knock down flying mosquitoes. It's the exposure of deposition following applications.
Yeah.
So that's where the designation is made. So there are timing of applications. So applications within the village would be made 2 hours after sunset and 2 hours before sunrise.
Okay.
And so that would be when bees would not be active and mosquitoes would be active.
So in your case, the drift, unlike a herbicide, which drift is a detrimental effect, drift for you is a positive effect.
For the adult mosquito control, it is. In the larval control, it's we're trying to apply to a specific body of water in a specific area, so that's separate. However, for adult mosquito control, drift is an advocate that's actually knocking down flying mosquitoes at that time. And so that's where the timing is specific to the application, as well as the dosage, which is specific to the application.
Okay.
Thank you, Kate. Joy, please.
Thanks. I think, and first of all, I like that we're asking all these questions because I didn't know a lot about the adult side. So it's nice to have clarification for that. I feel like maybe we're missing in this conversation a little bit just residents and their quality of life living outside. And I appreciate bees and I love them. And I know they do a lot of good things in our environment. And certainly we're all focused on the environment. We want to make our environment better. But I think we also have to be looking at the quality of life of kids playing in the parks, kids playing baseball, people out by the beach, people out and about. And it sounds to me like the adulticide is the last thing that we would go to, right? We would focus on the larvicide, which is safer and more environmentally friendly. And our last resort would be the adulticide. It doesn't sound like we've used it very much in the past several years. But from the standpoint of quality of life and being able to be outside in the summertime, which everybody loves to do, I think we need to at least consider our constituents and their comfort of being outside. There's a lot of outdoor activities that everyone's doing. So that's just my
And I think that would be my point of communication, where we need to know where we are from a environment standpoint, and we need to know that this has the possibility to trigger quality of life. I mean, that number 3 would be applied in accordance to quality of life of our residents. But I think the point I was making was we need to be aware of what is happening.
I just want to have a distinction. There's quality of life and there's risk of disease. And what we're going to be voting on is quality of life. That's in the proposal, right? It would be used if the number, is it only a last resort if there is a significant amount of mosquitoes found with disease? Or is it, as Regis said, that if it were the second week of August, nobody could go outside because there were so many mosquitoes?
You know, I'm trying to think of a summer. The last 2 summers have been so dry. They've been very, I don't think there's been any spraying in the last 2 years. Is that right, George?
We did have one adult mosquito control treatment last year for West Nile virus influx that happened later in the year.
And were you at a 1 or 2? What was your index on that one?
We were actually probably at a 2.5 at that point.
2.5.
It was a fairly large spike. With the longer summer last year, very warm, very dry. Ironically, with West Nile virus, many times that is the case. Very hot, very dry summers lead to more northern house mosquito or culex mosquitoes. And so adult mosquito control is performed on that way. But from a nuisance or a quality of life standpoint, if you could remember, that was 2 or 3 summers ago, we had a very, very wet spring. And that led to some questions, and that was probably the last quality of life or nuisance mosquito treatment for the district.
And George, in all your years of experience in the Lake Bluff Mosquito Abatement District, have there been times when you were sub 1 in an index, and the village or the Mosquito Abatement District was receiving calls for service for nuisance mosquitoes?
The district changed over the years, so there was more quality of life or nuisance mosquito applications earlier during the 1990s and early 2000s. At that time, most of the applications as West Nile virus emerged in the Illinois area, applications moved over towards West Nile virus because of specifically for budget numbers. And at that point, there have been nuisance sprayings at various times, but limited probably to, if there was any, the maximum during that period was probably 1 application during that time.
Well, the reason I was asking, one of my conversations I had with the North Shore Mosquito Abatement District Executive Director, he had talked about there were times when their index, which is probably not exactly like Clark's, but similar, was at a 3. He said most of the time it's 1, but they let it get that far because there's just so much pressure not to spray. And that so they just held off. And he said, we were getting murdered with phone calls, people complaining about nuisance mosquitoes, but there was a decision made that we weren't going to spray until it got over 3, and they waited. And it was, but that's a choice. I think we were all talking about the same thing, is the idea of not doing adulticide unless and until you feel it's absolutely necessary and appropriate given the circumstances. So,
Drew, could I ask George one more question? I think it's important.
Sure.
George, could you speak to the difference between what a nuisance mosquito, because I'm under the impression Aedes vexans is the nuisance mosquito you're talking about versus the Culex, which is the vector for West Nile. Is that true? So you're talking about one that's a nuisance and one that's a disease vector.
Yeah, and those are I guess would be genus groups. So there are actually about 38 different types of mosquitoes in Lake County.
Yeah.
The Culex pipian is the most common carrier of West Nile virus, but there are other Culex mosquitoes, Culex restruens, teratans. There are several different mosquito species within that same genera that carry West Nile virus and can spread that virus to other either mammals or other animals, humans, things of that sort. The Aedes vexans is what is known as the floodwater mosquito. That is where you would see really the dramatic change in nuisance or quality of life. That is one of the areas that we added in. It was part of the proposal discussion of treating some large wetland areas because that's where you get floodwater mosquitoes that sort of migrate in. Drew brought this up previously, the IDOT property, which is north of the sanctuary. There's an area sort of north of Public Works and west of the golf course, which is very low-lying areas, very hard to get to, which has a lot of water, which breeds that floodwater type of mosquito. So floodwater mosquitoes in general, we would call them nuisance mosquitoes. quality of life mosquitoes. The only thing that they do carry potentially is dog heartworm, but from a human aspect, doesn't carry any types of virus that would carry, like West Nile virus samples and stuff like that. The Culex genera carry the virus, West Nile virus, samples, encephalitis, which is something that we would see in the Chicago area, and those are the mosquitoes that are a little bit different. So there are different types of mosquitoes. I know this is a highly complex item, and I'm sure most of you don't want to learn about all 38 different types of mosquitoes, but our job is really to monitor and collect those, and then interact with staff to make recommendations based on what's happening. And it's really not a straightforward, when we get to one, we need to do an adult mosquito control, or we reached 30 mosquitoes in our population traps, we need to do adult mosquito control. Or even if the vector indexes, as Drew brought up, the vector index reached 2, we should do adult mosquito control. It's really looking at what's happening in the environment, what's happening temperature-wise, what's happening long-term for the next 2 weeks in weather. There are a lot of other factors that come into play as to when we make a recommendation for adult mosquito control. Larval control is something that is ongoing and constant during the season. So you're continuing to monitor sites, treat sites when they're found breeding, so that you can reduce that elevation of adult population. And adult mosquito control is utilized to knock those down when other factors come in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just, there's a parallel here, and when I think about concerns about environment and village services, we've not been in the mosquito abatement business ever, to my knowledge, the village. But we have been in the business of maintaining a road system in the wintertime, which means keeping it free of ice and snow, which we've done through salting, which is also an environmental concern, right? So over the years, we've gotten really good at monitoring how much salt we put down, and we've come up with protocols that we do to try to minimize the amount of salt we use to achieve the goal. And I think we would approach this in a very similar way, right? The idea, like, we want to use the minimum effort necessary, the minimum amount of chemicals necessary to achieve the goal. And I think that's how we plan on approaching that. So just know that if this contract is approved, we're going to work with Clark that's going to be our mindset going into this.
And I think that would be the concern that I hear on the board. So I thank you for that comment. Yeah. So if I don't hear any more questions, I believe this is a roll call.
Can we, I'm just not comfortable right now, and I have to say this, when we talk about the massive impact of what it means to not have bees, it is, to me, so much more important than our discomfort from mosquito bites. I don't think it's actually a comparable analysis, though I really appreciated it, Drew, because road safety matters. Is there a way could I propose an amendment that the village board is going to be involved in a decision to do adult abatement?
I would not recommend that.
No. Okay.
I think it's easier just to say, if you don't want to spray at all, tell us now, and we can work with and focus on larvicide and surveillance and efforts.
That's
because
where I'm at.
that would be very clunky.
Well, I mean, that would be my preference. Then, I'm not. I would have to say no if I'd have to vote no if we're only looking at a full package. I'd rather just look at larvicide.
Well, and again, from a staff's perspective, we're trying to do, again, the minimum that we could. And the idea, if we're not doing adulticide, I think we don't know what's around the corner. I'm not trying to scare anybody to say we don't know what diseases are lurking, but we don't know. And so the idea of having that there, I think the good news is that Clark has said they would work with us on other services. We designed this RFP to be a la carte. So if we need those services, we can go to them. And George, correct me if I'm wrong, but you would agree to honor those prices if, in fact, we needed to use those services.
That is correct. We would honor any of the prices that we designated and honor it by treatment versus utilizing the maximum number that was proposed in as part of the RFP.
So what we could do is that you can say, you can direct me to work with Clark we can plan on this summer not spraying any adulticide and say, let's look at it and see how it goes and come back next year and say, do we try something different? But as George said also, weather is going to dictate how this goes for us in many ways. So Happy to take the direction you
Yeah.
provide.
I'd like to know on the board if you guys are following Taryn's lead on that.
Could you clarify your like?
So the basic point is we would reduce the motion to go with number 1 and number 2 on this RFP, but not number 3. We would basically not do adult control. Is
Well, I
that
think
what
you'd
you're-
accept the proposal, just direct staff not to use adulticide.
Okay, fine. So accept the RFP, but direct staff not to do number 3.
So do you need a second to amend?
Whoever made the motion in the second, as long as they accept it, it'll be deemed
What-
amended.
What does that mean, though? I mean, presumably, we get into a very wet August, and you're under that direction. It doesn't de facto that mean that we're back in the voting to use
No, I think it's the
use the
idea.
adult side?
No, I think you'd be like, if the vector index was a 3, we would not be spraying, because you told me not to spray. And so,
So are you trying to take the pulse of where everybody's at?
Correct.
Okay.
I'm not comfortable with that. You know what? I trust staff, and they generally make good decisions. We've had a big discussion on this, and I would prefer to put it in the hands of staff. If they're getting hundreds of phone calls in August about mosquitoes and their hands are tied and they can't spray, I don't think that's fair of us to restrict them that way. And I really think, again, it's the last effort of what we would do. The important thing is that we're doing the larvicide, and I think this would be the very last thing that staff would do. But to tie their hands and say you can't do that and then force them to field literally maybe hundreds of phone calls, I don't think that's a fair thing to do.
Thank you, Joy. Thank you very much for that. What is the opinion of other members? Susan?
I'm where Joy is at this time. I think we have to monitor this. I think we need to talk about it more than just today and, next April. I think we need to talk about it again in May and see how it's going. I think we need to understand what we're up against, but we're new to this. And I think, given that the administration understands exactly where we're coming from, I know that they're not going to go out and spray tomorrow, so I would vote on the amendment, or on the proposal as is.
As such, okay, thank you. Steve, what do you think?
See arguments on both sides. To me, hearing about the safe, the concern about the bees, obviously spraying, if we could require spraying to be done at night when the bees are dormant. For me, taking a tool out of our public safety, holster is not acceptable to me. I would agree with Susan and Joy that we need to move forward with this.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah.
So, Darren, you're fine with your comments?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just reiterate that I don't see it as a life or death. I think it's a minor inconvenience. I get eaten alive, but what I choose to do in my backyard, perhaps then I will do my own. It's not an all or nothing. We do have autonomy as village residents to do our own abatement. And when we talk about how we're dedicated to being environmentally progressive, and let's put our money where our mouths are. I just am not comfortable with it, and that's where I am right now.
Thank you, Darren. Kate?
I would just want to add that the Sustainability Committee felt as Taryn does and as I do. To the degree that matters to any of us. I think I agree. I understand the concept of staff but there's not, we're missing a component of education here, which we had talked about a little bit. And I do think that we need to educate people. I think Trustee Ryder mentioned it before about ways for people in their own backyards to help us, because we do want to be environmentally progressive. I think that's going to be part of our brand to the degree that we want it to be. But and I think that there's still a lot of questions that are unanswered for me, but I am in the business of promoting the environment. Literally, that's what I do for people. So I can't get behind something that I know. And I appreciate George's answering our questions, being here. Thank you, George. I really appreciate it. I know that the hour is late, But I have to agree with trustee Fisher on this one. I'm not in favor of aerial application. So as written, I would have to vote no.
Thank you, Kate. Barb?
I think that we've asked a lot of really tough and specific questions from the person who actually does the work and knows these questions before we even ask them. And I was comfortable with the answers that we received. I'm also comfortable with having a level of trust with staff that they use restraint and a light hand. They're not clunky and heavy-handed in what they do. And so I would support just looking at what we have before us and supporting it, and knowing that staff understands our reluctance to use these adult larvicides or adult pesticides, and I think that's the way to move forward.
Thank you. So what I hear is 4 trustees are in favor of adopting this resolution as such, and 2 trustees are against the adult control for the danger of the environment. But we also trust the staff. What I also hear is we trust staff to be parsimonious in applications to these chemicals, basically. Okay, so to that extent, we would vote on a roll call to the resolution as it stands right now. Okay?
Trustee Inkman?
Aye.
Trustee Brand?
Nay.
Trustee Fisher?
No.
Trustee Markey?
Aye.
Trustee Rappin?
Aye.
Trustee Ryder?
Aye.
Thank you. That was a very important conversation. Next, item number 21, a resolution authorizing the execution of a construction contract for the village of Lake Bluff 2022 miscellaneous Portland cement concrete sidewalk and curb replacement project. So I understand that we're still working through bids, right?
Correct.
And so that would be again a motion. I would basically entertain a motion to continue the resolution to the next meeting, correct?
Yes.
So moved. Second.
Thank you very much. And it is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The resolution carries. Item number 20.
Resolution did not carry, resolution was deferred.
Yes.
Resolution was deferred. Thank you.
Want the minutes to say that.
And I'm lost. I don't know where I am anymore. 22? 22.
22.
Item 22 next is a resolution authorizing the execution of a construction contract with Archon Construction, Inc. for the Village of Lake Bluff 2022 sanitary sewer manhole rehabilitation project. Is there a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. At 10:30 a.m. on Tuesday, April 5th, 2022, the Village of Lake Bluff opened bids for the 2022 sanitary sewer manhole rehabilitation project. 2 bids were opened with the lowest responsive bid of $249,910 submitted by Archon, or Archon, I don't know, Construction, Inc. of Addison, Illinois. The 3rd bid arrived after the deadline and was not opened. The scope of the project includes various repairs to 50 sanitary sewer manholes that range from changing the manhole lid to a full cementitious lining of the inside of a manhole. The vast majority of the manholes to be repaired are in the area of a village bound by Sheridan Road, East Witchwood Lane, Moffett Road, and East Sheridan Road. The repairs will limit the amount inflow and infiltration into the sanitary sewer system and lessen the potential of sewer backups during rain events. The village fiscal year 2022 budget includes a total of $465,000 for improvements to the sanitary sewer system, including the proposed contract with Archon Construction and related inspection services. Approximately $290,000 will have been committed. The village is working on a sanitary sewer lining project to expand the remaining budgeted funds. Archon Construction has successfully completed similar work in its community in northeast Northeastern Illinois in recent years. The village engineer is recommended that the village board award the contract to Arch & Construction, Inc. for the amount of $249,910. Questions?
I have a quick question for Drew. Drew, there is more scope for sewers than just this proposal. So the question I'd have is the total budget, which I believe is 465,000. Can we do the remaining work for sewers with the remaining budget of roughly $210,000?
Yes, because we have a set aside a dollar amount to invest in that particular system or asset. So we go as far as the money will go in that particular investment.
I see.
So,
Okay, so this estimate is not grossly over what we would have expected.
no, I don't. Jeff, you want to talk about that in terms of your engineer's estimate versus these bids?
This project, the engineer's estimate, I think was like 205,000.
Yeah.
Lately, engineers' estimates aren't worth a whole lot, given there's a lot of volatility in the market that we're just learning about as projects started bidding this spring, which was the problem with the sidewalk project. So we're comfortable. This is what the market says the project should be. Our second bid was $50,000 higher, so it seems like this is just what it costs these days to do this kind of work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions? Okay, so this is a roll call. Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Brienne.
Aye.
Trustee Fisher.
Aye.
Trustee Markey.
Aye.
Trustee Rappin.
Aye.
Trustee Ryder.
Aye.
Trustee Inkman.
Aye.
Thank you. Item number 23 was already addressed. Item 24 is our trustees' report. Do any trustee wish to make a report this evening? No. Thank you. And next is item number 25.
If you can take 26 out of order, that would be great, just so that we can conclude the open part of the meeting since we're doing it virtually.
Good point. Item number 26, consideration of a March 28, 2022 executive session meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any changes? Thank you. Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Fisher.
Aye.
Trustee Markey.
Aye.
Trustee Rappin.
Aye.
Trustee Ryder.
Aye.
Trustee Inkman.
Aye.
Trustee Brienne.
Aye.
Next is I believe we have an executive session tonight,
Personnel.
and we'll be addressing personal matters.
So you need a motion, yes.
So could I please have a motion for this executive session?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. And I now declare the
Roll call.
roll call. Sorry.
Trustee Markey.
Aye.
Trustee Rappin.
Aye.
Trustee Ryder.
Aye.
Trustee Inkman.
Aye.
Trustee Brienne.
Aye.
Trustee Fisher.
Aye.
Thank you. And I now declare the open session of the open portion of this meeting closed. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.